Hey everybody, Stepan Hovnanian from Google Plus Business Spotlight. Welcome to this week's edition. Really excited to have you here, and want to take a quick moment before we introduce our guests and we bring Ben into the film strip again. Like last week with Yifat Cohen, we're playing around with this cameraman app, trying to elevate our game a little bit here. And speaking of which, I want to thank everybody for coming last week. You guys were awesome, helped us really shape a little bit of the show. And I want to thank our email subscribers at GPLUSSPOTLIGHT.com for for constantly giving us feedback and helping us come up with new ways that we can help you guys understand how real businesses are using Google+. So side note there, head over to GPLUSSPOTLIGHT.com and get on our list so that we can talk to you guys a little bit more. Really appreciate that. And I also want to give out a few shout outs to our tweeters. We started up a Twitter list of people who tweet about the show. We're up over 60 now, people. How cool is that? And it's only been we've only been doing this for about a month. So that's pretty awesome. And I want to give a couple of shout outs to people who have tweeted for this show, so excuse me for looking away. But Roxanne Davenport, thank you. Mark Horn, we've got Lenny Spooner, Jennifer Marshall, Michelle S., thank you. And Monica Schmidt, Denise Wakeman, Carrie Ann Foster, Rebecca Quinn. I sent a tweet, so Stepan, haha. And link in the event description if any of you guys feel inclined to shoot that out and help get this out to a little bit wider audience. We'd really appreciate it. So, all right, enough about this. Now let's bring on our guest for today, and as well as our esteemed co-host Ben Fisher. How are you today, Ben?
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday.
What's going on? So we're in the throes of summer over in the West Coast for you guys, right? It's so beautiful here in Boston.
Yeah, it's only about 109 degrees out today, something like that.
Yeah.
Balmy.
I haven't looked at the weather for us over here, but it's about hot degrees with very little humidity. So typical desert day.
The no humidity is good for the hair, I hear.
Very.
Excellent, excellent. And so speaking of Dustin, hello Dustin Stout. How are you today? Our esteemed guest for Google Plus Business Spotlight.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, Dustin, you're pretty new to Google Plus, right?
Yeah. I'm just kind of looking around, seeing what I can see. I haven't found any of my family or friends yet, so we'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we just and I heard recently that you just started taking classes on Photoshop and Illustrator, and you've learned a couple things, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn this whole Photoshop thing. I think I have what it takes to be a graphic designer someday when I grow up. So, very, very exciting times for me.
So for those of you who have been under a rock on Google Plus, or maybe are coming to this this episode for the first time through some totally random channel, Dustin Stout, Google Plus veteran, branding, branding aficionado, just a great guy when it comes to visual imagery, and that's what we're going to talk about because visual does really well here on Google Plus, and Dustin does visual really, really well. So he actually, when we were talking beforehand, one of the things he shared with Ben and I and the rest of the Steady Demand team at one of our retreats was this like 5-minute tutorial on a couple of different graphic design tips that I know personally for me, have helped like really just shape the way that I take a look at picture, when I take pictures with my phone, or if I'm going to try and create quote graphics or anything like that. So that's going to be our first topic. We have a couple other topics because this show's about all things Dustin, but I'm going to put you on the spot now, buddy, and see if we can recreate that 5-minute thing without the beautiful picturesque window that we had overlooking the Las Vegas Strip. So everybody in the back of your minds, picture Las Vegas.
Yeah, so this was kind of a spur of the moment. I mean, a lot of times I teach clients and friends who are curious, what some basic principles are, because I think anybody can get good at creating beautiful graphics. You don't have to take years of training in Photoshop. You can use simple tools like Canva. There's a few iPhone apps I use. If you understand just a few basic principles of design and what human beings are programmed to interpret as beautiful, then you can create beautiful art and images for your online marketing, for your websites, for fun, if you just want to do it for fun. So we were in Las Vegas, and I kind of had these concepts rolling around in my head. I'm watching everybody else do these great presentations in our beautiful Las Vegas room overlooking the entire city, and I see this big window, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a perfect visual for what I'm going to be teaching. So just like I did in Vegas, I'm going to use this frame. I'm going to take away my lower third here, and I want you to imagine that you're looking at me as your image. So we know that photography does really well as a background for an image. If you're doing like a quote graphic or a blog post graphic or just any kind of promotional graphic, you can use a photograph as the background. So imagine me as your photograph, and this window here is the limits of the photograph. So picture this. You want to create say a quote graphic. You just wrote a great blog post and you want to put one of your quotes from the article in it. That's a brilliant thing to do, and there's 3 principles you need to keep in mind when you're creating that image. The first one is balance. So balance is this idea that every element in a photo is somehow has weight to it. So right now I'm the subject of the photo. Behind me is the background. Now right now I'm pretty centered in the frame. Let me make sure I'm pretty centered in the frame. So the balance of the photo is in the center. The balance of the entire image draws to the center. So you want to be aware of that. If I were, say, over here, the balance of the photo would shift to this side. So your text or whatever it is you're creating on the photo would want to either align with that balance or counteract the balance. For instance, if it's centered, it's pretty easy. You'd want to overlay your text over top in the center. It's the easiest thing to do. There's ways to get around it, but keep it simple. Make it easy on yourself in the beginning. So I would say center your text, and if I was over here, maybe I was the person being quoted in the photo, you would want to put your text over here to balance it out. So I'm the heavy part of the photo, and then your text would balance out the weight of the photo by coming on the other side. So very kind of simple concept, but might take a while for you to develop an eye for where the balance is in the photograph, but give it a try. Be aware of where you're putting your text or where you're putting your elements, and try and balance it out. As human beings, we are attracted and kind of programmed to see beauty as symmetry, whether it's straight up symmetry, same on this side, same on that side, or it's asymmetry where it's something over here, something over here. They're not exactly the same, but they balance each other out. Balance communicates stability. Stability communicates professionalism and trustworthiness, and we kind of latch on to that as human beings. First principle is balance. Second principle is framing. So in anywhere you look, in Las Vegas we had this big window again, and every window has a frame around it. So the frame allows for a bit of space, a bit of room, or white space as a lot of people call it in web design. So your framing dictates how much space away from the edge of the photo you want to put your elements. So for instance, if I was doing a text overlay for this image that you see here, I wouldn't want to put my text all the way to the edge of the frame because it's constricting. It makes you feel like something's cut off. Unless you're trying a psychological, or emotional response of constriction or being cut off or some of those kind of tense emotions that you're trying to evoke, you want to stay away from putting things all the way against the edge. So one of the great things to do is kind of imagine a specific frame. So I'm trying to get this right here. So imagine a little bit of padding on the top and the same amount of padding on the sides, just as if there was a frame around the entire photograph, and make it apparent that you will not put any element or any text past that frame. That's kind of like your border. Don't cross the border. Keep the white space intact. The last principle that I discussed was typography. So one of the most tricky things in creating graphics is finding the right font to use, the right typography to use. And again, that's tricky. It takes a little bit of skill. I myself am a bit of a font snob, so what I tend to do is I tell people, find something that's strong, that's easy to read. Most importantly, when you're creating graphics for online, they need to be easy to read. Something strong, easy to read, and don't use more than 2 fonts. Please, for the love of God, do not use 15 different fonts thinking that it's going to somehow coordinate and look good. It takes a lot of skill to be able to pair fonts, and Canva actually has some great write-ups about pairing fonts, but stick to 2 fonts that kind of complement each other, not one that's like kind of crazy all over the place and one that's like really straight-laced. Sometimes it just doesn't match. It's like putting, you know, plaid with polka dots. You just don't do it. So just stick to 1 font. Usually works well for me, or 2 fonts if you absolutely have to. But be very intentional about it. And for the love of God, 2 pro tips: never, ever, ever use Comic Sans, ever, 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 ever. Number 2, never use Papyrus. Both of these fonts should be eliminated from Earth. And that's my 3 tips: balance, framing, typography.
And a shout out to Kristen Drysdale there, because she kind of preempted you on that, Dustin. She said, "I know what Dustin W thinks about Comic Sans."
You know, think of it this way: every time you use Comic Sans, a unicorn dies.
You know, I'll tell you what. When you started saying there about balance leads to symmetry. Symmetry. I couldn't help but think about it like Yoda actually saying that, because you're like, balance leads to symmetry.
Balance leads to symmetry. Symmetry leads to Jedi-ness. I don't know.
I forget. Yeah, we'll work on it.
Meme this, you should. Yes.
But you know, one thing also that you went over in Vegas, because there was one other point that and I remember I asked you this right afterwards, and that is a little bit about how you do the sizing of your fonts also, because you do your sizing very intentionally to highlight certain words.
Yeah, sometimes, well, a lot of times there's a certain key phrase or maybe some certain hot words that you want to highlight that really kind of make the sentence or make the quote, or, you know, that really communicate the most important part of whatever you're typing out. And sometimes I'll make those a little bit bigger. Again, it's a little bit trickier because you have to, again, balance everything. So you want to balance the size of the typography, make sure that one thing's not, you know, causing the image to be a little heavy on one side, or, you know, too top heavy. But I will, every now and then, I'll make certain phrases or certain words bigger, showing a bit of emphasis on that word. And, you know, a lot of times there's, you know, I'll put some little psychological things in there, you know, like just highlight a few words throughout, when really those 3 words are the key message that I want them to take away. So, that.
So, Dustin, we have a couple of questions, actually. Well, not really questions. We wanted to talk about your favorite apps for image editing and also text over images, right? I had put this out to my audience when I shared this morning, and I asked them, I was like, what are your favorite apps? And I'm going to bring up a couple of them, and then we'll talk about some of yours. So, Alex Hernandez said Mextures, Afterlight, and Snapseed, and he was responding with a comment about people overusing HDR. And you know, I kind of agree with them. If you like it, then cool. You know, don't get too snobby about it, people. I mean, if it looks cool, then stick with it. But Mextures, Afterlight, and Snapseed. We had a couple of people talk about Snapseed, and then Mike Alton talking about Over, Aviary, and Snapseed. And I know for myself, I have the Moto X has pretty much all of Snapseed built into the camera, which is pretty awesome because I don't need another font. I don't need another app for it. So I'll go with that. But I also said Fonto, which you told me about, which is freaking awesome. And then, oh wait, that's different. That's a different one. So yeah, Fonto is another one that popped up a lot. So those guys, any thoughts on any of them? And then also, give us your secret sauce.
Yeah, I love Fonto. Obviously, I recommended it to you. I use it. I don't use it as frequently anymore because I've found some other apps that kind of do what I need them to do. Fonto tends to be a lot. There's a lot to do in there. I mean, there's a lot you can do in it. There's a lot of options, which to me is counterproductive because if you give me a lot of options, I'm going to tinker with all of them. So I kind of have to intentionally limit myself, which limitations can help enhance creativity. But just for my own sake of not having to tinker for an hour on my phone with an image, I use very simple tools for very specific tasks. So Snapseed's great. I've used it a lot. What were some of the other ones? Gosh, there was one in there that Mextures. Mextures is a fantastic app. I think it's both on Android and iOS. I only have an iPhone, so I can only speak to iOS users. But Mextures is great. I have it in my arsenal. Another one that I use is Over. Over is a really popular one for adding text over top of images. Pixlr Express is one that I use. It's very much like Fonto. A lot of options. I mean, we're talking hundreds of options to tinker and tweak and add effects and all kinds of fun things in there. Another one I use is Pressgram. Pressgram is an app that will allow you to connect to your WordPress install. So if you have a WordPress-powered website or blog, you can use Pressgram to not only edit the photos and add text and all kinds of fun stuff, but you can publish them instantly to your WordPress blog, as well as a number of social media sites, including Google+, which is really, really cool. I'm not using Pressgram a lot right now because there's some wonky things with my WordPress theme that won't allow me to hide my Pressgram posts from my main feed, so they go directly into my RSS, and I don't want to flood all my RSS readers and subscribers with just photos. So I'm working on a plugin that's going to work around that. But my #1 secret weapon for creating photos that are just gorgeous, again, like I said, I love Snapseed, but it's a little too much sometimes, I feel like. The filters are just a little over the top at times, and I find myself doing too much tweaking to kind of tone them down. My #1 go-to photo editing app is VSCOCAM, VSCOCAM. It has the most beautiful photos, or filters, photo filters, rather. It has a small set of editing capabilities. You can't add text. This is strictly for editing photos and kind of adjusting all the things for a photo. But man, their filters are beautiful. They're so professional looking, and with just a few clicks, you can take an iPhone photo and make it seem like it was taken and processed by a seasoned professional photographer. So a lot of the images that you see me create, I've likely taken them on my phone and put them through the VSCO editing process, and then maybe taken it into Photoshop and added some text.
Right on, man. Thank you, dude. I think that brought a lot of value, especially your secret weapon, which I put into the comments. Yeah. Now that we've gone over some of the design principles, and thanks for the excellent presentation. I mean, I got to see it before. Hey, awesome. Now the entire world's gotten to see it. So let's segue and let's move on and talk a little bit about G+ and branding. So we've talked a lot about how we've all kind of trained our audiences to expect real certain things from us. For instance, people definitely expect that if they go to Dustin.tv or Dustin W Stout on Google+, that they are going to see a beautiful photo that's very balanced and speaks to somebody's soul, right? And so let's talk a little, we got about 5 minutes here, so let's talk really quickly about how we've trained our respective audiences to expect certain types of content, and and kind of talk a little bit about how somebody can choose their branding and voice.
It's a funny thing, this internet place, and there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions and a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, And the one thing that a lot of people seem to miss is that you can brand yourself, and you can do things. If you do them consistently enough, they will work for you. So I'm going to use myself and Stepan as an example. So my audience knows that I'm a designer. They know that I create visuals for a living. They know that that my passion, my profession, my skills, my gifts are in the visual arena. So they expect to see from me visuals because that's what I do consistently, and that's who I am. So for someone like Stepan, who's extremely brilliant when it comes to, very highly technical stuff, SEO, web design, development, that kind of stuff, he's not necessarily known as a visual guy. He's known for his brilliant intellect and knowing how to get in there and get behind the scenes. So he's groomed his audience to respond to a different type of content, just as I've groomed my audience to respond to my style of content. So whether you're into the visuals or whether you're into just the technical stuff, very long form, not visual oriented stuff, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're into, do that consistently, and your audience will flock to it, and they'll rally around it. Because just like I said, I feel like I say this on every single interview I do. Branding is more about consistency than anything else. Being consistent day in, day out, doing something that your people can expect, that your audience knows to expect from you at a level that you're just passionate about delivering. So yeah, absolutely. There's debates going on about whether or not the perfect post format is relevant or viable, and despite what anyone thinks, it is for certain audiences. For some audiences, maybe not. For the majority of Facebook users, there's been studies done that shorter posts work on Facebook, up to 40 characters. So a large portion of that audience only wants to see about 40 characters worth of content, and they want to see a pretty picture or a funny picture along with it. People on Twitter, there's studies done on people on Twitter. Visuals are doing a little bit better now on Twitter. They're starting to gain some momentum, but before it was the majority of action and the majority of retweets and so forth took place on quotes, funny quotes, inspirational quotes, just tweeted. So you have to understand your audience.
Excellent, man. By the way, you sounded like Megatron for about a millisecond there. You went, anyway. So, yeah. So no, but it's excellent. I mean, and the whole thing about the perfect post. I mean, you and I went back and forth on that, of course, when we were talking about social signals, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the point there is that the perfect post is the perfect post that's perfect for your audience.
Exactly.
For instance, Christine DeGraff, just this weekend, she put out a post with a period, and that was the post, right? She ended up getting over 255 comments. She actually got shares and pluses, but you know what? That was a perfect post for that time, for that day, for her audience. They responded to that because that was humor.
Well, and there's the thing about Christine's audience. Christine has a very specific audience who knows her and loves her. She does a great job at kind of mixing things up, and so her audience kind of expects things that are a little wacky, a little outside the box, and a little tongue-in-cheek sometimes. So it was a perfect post for her audience. If I did that, people would say, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" It wouldn't be. People would be calling me on the phone. Do you need help? Do we need to send an ambulance? Is something wrong? But Christine's audience knows her. They know her personality because she puts her personality into everything she does.
Exactly.
So I want to hop in here real quick because I have a comment here from Marilyn, sort of cycling back to our conversation about images, but it actually works. It works really well all the way through what we've been talking about and into the next topic. So Marilyn asks, thinking time management for a small business owner about how much time should be devoted to the image. It's easy to spend hours looking for the perfect image, adding text, etc. And to that, I would add, again, to try and keep things sort of in sync with the direction of our topics here. You know, how are there any ideas or tips that you could give for people to create some consistency with their images, and then also, you know, how that consistency kind of plays out onto social media or Google Plus or whatever. And then
Yes.
we'll talk time management, because you have a lot of really, really cool things that you do and tools that you use for time management. So take it away, Dustin, and take us home.
Well, what I have done is I realized I'm a perfectionist, so I have serious OCD. I have problems. Okay, I need things to be perfect and precise, and I need to make sure that the sizing or the spacing on the top, the framing is exactly 50 pixels from the top and exactly 50 pixels from the right. So I'm obsessive, and I can literally spend hours on one photo, but it all comes down to discipline. There's a rule out there. I can't remember who created this rule, but you know, however much time you have to do a thing, that's the amount of time it'll get done in. So what I've done is I've set up some very clear barriers. So when I have to create a blog image, I set a timer for 15 minutes. If I'm not done in 15 minutes, there's no image, and that, you know, forces me to get it done. So I've created some workflows. I've found a number of websites that I know I can go to and find great images quickly. And sourcing is sometimes the hardest part. So what I would recommend is find a list. You know, for instance, the best places to find free images online. I don't know. A list where somebody has found some really great places to source images or content of that type, and find which one works best for you, because different people work different ways. Different people, you know, interpret things in different ways. So find the website that works best for you. I've actually put out a list. Go to dustin.tv/find-free-images. There's a big list of my favorite sites to go to find imagery, free imagery to use for the most part. And find the site that works for you. Find a few of them. Go to those every single time you need to source content, and give yourself a time limit to find the perfect photo. And then, you know, find a tool that is easy for you to use. So there's tools like Canva, there's Pixlr.com, there's PicMonkey, PhotoPin. There's a ton of places out there that allow you to, use quick and easy tools. I recommend Canva because they're typically the fastest tool set. And then find that workflow that works, and be efficient. Set a timer.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Dustin. And by the way, do make sure to please, after the show, drop some of those links, especially the Dustin.tv link. And by the way, I want to give every single person who's watching this a call to action. If you have been living under a rock, you probably didn't see this. But if you haven't been, you maybe have. But either way, Dustin released just recently to his insider list a plethora of images, icons, all done in Photoshop, all vectorized. Well, not vectorized, but all just ready to go. They are vectorized. And I've taken these things personally, and I've uploaded every single one of them into Canva, because I've said it before, I cannot design my way out of a paper bag. So, but now I can, because I'm using a lot of these icons. One of the icon sets that he has is he redesigned all of Google Plus's icons, and they're beautiful. They're great. They size fantastic. So the call to action is go sign up for Dustin's insider email list, because he's going to keep on updating these, right, Dustin?
Yep, I'm adding resources almost every week.
Exactly, and this dovetails into the last thing, and that is that, so we all know that Dustin's a busy guy. We've talked about time management, we've talked about design, but there's something new coming on the horizon, and I'm proud to actually be a part of it. So Dustin, really quickly before we wrap things up here, we're probably gonna run about 3 minutes over, everybody. But really quickly, tell us about some of the new stuff that you got coming up on the horizon, and then we're gonna close this baby up.
Sure. So without saying too much, because there's a lot of things to put together, I'm working on the next evolution of Dustin.tv. Now, a long time ago, years ago, I bought that .tv extension or TLD domain for a reason. Up until now, there hasn't been a ton of video on for Dustin.tv, my blog, but that's all going to change, and that's going to hopefully be coming early fall or very late summer. But to kind of warm everyone up for that, warm up my audience and get them used to more video coming from me and my brand new YouTube channel, youtube.com/DustinTV. I'll be doing a weekly news roundup of the top social media headlines and trying to insert some humor and some creativity into that. So you can expect the first installment of a weekly video series this Friday. And it's going to eventually lead into something much, much bigger for Dustin.tv, and I'm excited to have Ben be a part of it as well.
Awesome. Excellent. All right, Stefan, you want to lead us home?
Yeah, and before I do, I want to just say thanks to we had a couple extra great comments, and I want to bring them up. Well, first off, Nazim Beltran saying, so basically there's no need to master Photoshop. Yeah, I guess I know myself. I'm kind of moving them farther and farther away from it. And Lee Rickler also had a great point, and I'm going to expand on this: is don't spend all day on stock photo sites, especially because people can totally see through a stock photo at this point. Grab a camera, take the picture yourself. It'll be quicker, and you'll own the photo, which is kind of a hot topic these days. To that, I would add, you don't have to say, okay, I need a photo of something, and then go do it. Right? So if you're out and about and you see, some really cool textures on the wall, take a picture of it. Gotta love auto backup. And then you can always go back. You can edit it with any of these tools that we talked about. You can crop. You can just totally change the color of them. I mean, you can do so much stuff, right? So you have your own little stock library of things that you take with your, high megapixel photo camera at this point. And if all you're doing it for is social media and your blog, not a big problem. It's when you're pushing it up to print and things like that, you want high resolution. But if you're not in that doing graphics for that, don't worry about it. So so that's where we are with those comments, and I would encourage you guys to continue to chat about that kind of stuff in the comments. But for us, we're going to wrap things up. And for Ben, Dustin, and myself, Dustin, again, thank you for all the tips, all the techniques, and the apps, and the time management tools, and the free resources too on your insiders list. I love them, and we really are excited to hear more about that. We should probably have you back on the show when you start up this thing, the variety show should be pretty awesome. Everybody keep an eye out for that. And otherwise, for Ben, Bestin, there he is, the two of you guys together.
Bestin.
Bestin.
Bestin Pond. That's the three of us.
It's a Bestapon.
There we go. All right, so for the three of us, myself especially, thank you guys for watching Google Plus Business Spotlight, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.